What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today we've got FlexBurkhead on the channel. I believe I saw him kind of floating around Twitter, mainly in the sports card world, because despite mainly only collecting wrestling cards, I do like to dabble in the sports world, mainly to see from a content perspective and community, like what's going on, what's hot, what's not, what are the products people are talking about. And I've said before, I take that information and apply it to wrestling cards. It's worked so far, I probably won't stop doing it anytime soon. But back to the topic at hand, FlexBurkhead. I think he was tweeting about a lot of sports stuff, mainly Cleveland Browns when I saw him, and then I started seeing him talking about wrestling and posting wrestling, and I was like, this is once again one of those guys that I gotta get on the channel, coming from outside of that wrestling card bubble, coming into it and being able to apply what he's learned in sports cards to wrestling. But before we jump into that interview, you know I gotta get the plugs in. Here we go. Make sure to subscribe. You're already here. It takes 2 seconds to hit that button. Give me a like if you like this, if you like FlexBurkhead, if you like Wrestling with Cards interviews on this channel. And make sure to share this channel with a friend. If there's somebody out there that's a wrestling fan, into sports cards, kind of like what we're going to talk about today with FlexBurkhead, or maybe they are already into wrestling cards and they just don't know about this channel, make sure to tell them about Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. Check out the podcast I'm a part of, Worlds Collide, myself and Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com. We talk all things wrestling cards each and every week, available on all popular podcast platforms. No matter what you listen to podcasts on, it's on there. Just search Worlds Collide Wrestling Card Podcast. Please give us a review, and if you dig it, hit that subscribe button there as well. If you'd like to help contribute monetarily to this channel, there's a few ways you can do that. First and foremost, Wrestling with Cards on Patreon. For only $1 a month, you can show your support, have your name mentioned in the credits of these videos. There's other tiers you can get more out of, exclusive video content, maybe some bonus merch down the line, maybe coupons for my eBay store, which is the next thing I was going to mention is my eBay store. There's things as little as $1.50 shipped. We've got wrestling, we've got sports, we've got non-sport, all kinds of stuff, slabs, collectibles, there's all kinds of stuff in there. And of course, my social media. I'm on a lot of social media platforms, so whatever you're on, I'm probably on there. Links to everything that I have mentioned is in the show notes, so you can either pause this video and check out those links, or after this video, make sure to check those out. But either way, let's get into the conversation today with FlexBurkhead. We've got FlexBurkhead on the show.
What's up?
With a Prism box sitting right in front of you. How tempting.
How on brand, right?
Yeah, of course. Welcome to the show. Finally glad to talk to you in person here, and we've gone back and forth on Twitter. I think, I could be wrong, but I think when I first kind of saw your name around on Twitter, it was more with sports cards, correct me if I'm wrong. And I would just want to know like how you went from that to getting into wrestling cards, just to start things off.
Yeah, so I've always collected sports cards, and then I've always been a wrestling fan too, like my whole life. And 2020 comes around, and I was on and off sports card. 2020 comes around like everybody else. I jumped heavy back into it. And then these past couple of years, like focusing on like I was trying to make money with my cards, you know, and I kind of got away from collecting stuff that I actually like. And so I realized that a lot of the sports cards, buying, flipping, selling, grading, a lot of it is gambling.
Sure. Yeah.
I learned quite quickly, and I hate gambling. So I would see my successes, like I'd buy something, flip it for profit. And that was cool and great and everything. Then I would start buying something, crack it, resub it to PSA, get a good grade, and then by the time it gets back, player's injured, card value goes down, and I'm like, man, this is just not fun anymore.
Right.
And then so this is a painful story.
Let's hear it.
Everybody probably already knows this too. I mean, I was a huge Cleveland Browns fan,
right,
and a huge Baker Mayfield fan, and the whole like everything last year, Baker getting hurt, everybody started to hate him, and then they went and they signed Deshaun Watson, which for me is like, how do I morally continue to support this team when this doesn't necessarily align?
I'm sure
with
a
my
lot
beliefs,
of people feel that way.
And it got to the point where it's like, man, I've rooted for this team for so long and been through so much, and this is like finally the breaking point where I don't actually have to be a fan of a team anymore, you know? Mm-hmm. So I was like, and in the meantime, I would see like your content, and I would see people like Brett McGrath and Card Foundation and Caleb and David Peck. They would be posting their wrestling cards. And like, man, I should look into wrestling cards a little bit. So here and there over the past few months, I started picking up a few things, wrestlers I like, rookie cards. And then as I got less and less enjoyment out of sports cards, I realized I would get more and more enjoyment finding stuff that I like of wrestlers that I like. And then once WWE, because I was kind of off and on watching for a while because I moved, I didn't have cable anymore, and I would just watch highlights here and there. Once they did the deal with Peacock, I've been watching every week again,
Mm-hmm.
So my love of wrestling kind of got revamped, and then that led me to kind of going all into wrestling cards.
So a couple things. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so the more I would look into it, I would just Google like, oh, Seth Rollins, he's great. His cards are probably expensive, right? I would search Seth Rollins and be like, why are these cards so cheap? So then I'd pick up Seth Rollins gold cards for like $30, autographs for like $50. I was like, why is it that you can buy a hobby box for $150 and the best hits in the box cost you $30, $50? So I'm just going to buy up all these singles because they're cheaper than buying a box. Why would I rip a box? Long story short, that's the gist of it.
One thing I think, actually, there's two things I want to touch on that I think, I'm jumping ahead, we're seeing a lot of the different people come into wrestling cards now. One thing that I think you could share maybe your perspective on is how has the transition been for you from just you take it whatever direction you want, going from mainly sports cards into, I guess, mainly wrestling cards now? How has the transition itself been?
It's been a little bit weird because a lot of the stuff I learned in sports cards seems like a lot of the wrestling card community doesn't actually know yet.
Yeah.
You probably know better than anyone.
Yeah.
like even before, when Panini first did the deal with WWE, I saw everyone, like old wrestling collectors, like, oh, burn it down, like, I don't want any part of this. Everything's going to be expensive now. But for me, it's just like second nature. Like, this is how much this card should be. This is how much this box is going to be. A gold Prism is going to be a couple $1,000s, whereas your old Tops is so cheap. So It's been weird. It's been weird kind of seeing like all the different perspectives of stuff that people in the card world already know that people in the wrestling card world don't quite know yet. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I'm sure you've seen myself or Gelman or all these other people talking about it. Like, we've been trying to warn people ahead of time, and it's like some of them listened, some of them already knew and agreed with us, and then there was a whole sector that was just like, there's no way you're going to have $1,000 hobby box, and if you are, if there is, I'm out of the hobby. And then sure enough, here come the prices, here come the complaints, and it's like, well, we've been trying to tell you guys. So more into the transition, you said that you just been having a lot more fun with wrestling cards. If you could kind of dissect that a little bit, like what is, because I think the average person would say that's not the traditional wrestling card collector would be like, okay, well, my sports cards, they give me enjoyment just like your wrestling cards give you enjoyment. But I don't think people understand the differences that you like, the feeling you have, or it's fun. It's not so much you have to worry about the flipping, like you said. I mean, that is, you could do that potentially, and we've seen it with Prism. We'll get into that. But like, how has the enjoyment factor been for you? Maybe a little less stressful, or you get more enjoyment out of the cards, just wherever you want to take that.
Yeah, it's a lot less stressful because, like I said, like a lot of the sports cards is gambling in a way, And so if I go and buy a Joe Burrow rookie card for $5,000, it's like, okay, he's great now, but in 2 years he tears his ACL again, his career's over, then that's gone out the window. And this card, like, if I'm not a fan of him, I'm not going to enjoy this card anymore. Even with your favorite teams and your favorite players, like, how long are they going to be on your favorite team? How long till they get hurt, they can't play again? This guy has one good year, his prices he's really expensive. It was a flash in the pan. Next year, he's nothing again. But with wrestling, it's like, say, John Cena, he's always going to be John Cena. You don't have to worry about him next year. He loses 10 matches and all of a sudden his cards are not worth anything anymore. He's closer to Spider-Man than he is to Tom Brady. Because he's like that's part of the fun of it to me is like these guys, they are forever, and like even if somebody necessarily like he's not a top superstar and all of a sudden he gets cut by the WWE, you can go watch him you can go watch him somewhere else. He signs with another promotion, you can still follow his career, you following the person, whereas in sports cards, somebody gets cut, they never play again, and you have your cards, and it's you just have, and then there's the nostalgia factor that ties into all of it too.
Right.
You can keep following somebody or something, even if they're out of the top tier of their career, the pinnacle of their career, and to me, that's that's what makes it more fun.
Yeah, great points. Like, we've got, look at Chris Jericho. Like, he's like, where else are you besides Tom Brady? Where else are you going to find anybody in sports playing into their 50s or even, the Rock and Roll Express, for crying out loud, are still wrestling. Those guys have been wrestling for 30, 40 years now. And like, if you bought their cards in the 80s, you're still somehow able to follow them up to now. It's like, and it's nostalgia. How often are we going back to Peacock or going to YouTube and watching old stuff? Whereas traditional,
right? Like I'm not gonna. I don't go back and watch old football games. Like maybe some people do, but I don't. I can go back and watch Chris Jericho match from 20 years ago, or I can watch a new match tomorrow.
Right. Perfect segue to let's talk a little bit about prospecting before I have some notes here I want to get into, but that's one thing I've been asked a lot about, and you were kind of talking about gambling, but does it really apply to wrestling? It's kind of up for debate. So I'd like to get your opinion. Like, I know we're going to start seeing prospecting with wrestling because you've got these sports card guys coming in. They know Prism, they know the rookie card logo, but at the same time, us as wrestling fans know how the rookies for wrestling can get cut out of nowhere and just go away. Like, what do you think about that whole phenomenon that could be coming in shortly?
I think prospecting is big, obviously, in sports and baseball and football and basketball. I think I actually recently started doing it a little bit with wrestling, just to kind of see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's potential for it, but I think it will take people being invested longer term. Because a guy like Braun Breaker right now, everybody wants his rookie card. It could be 5 years before he wrestles on Raw.
Sure.
And what in wrestling will it take for somebody to see prices spike? Are prices going to start spiking when somebody wins a title, and somebody starts main eventing WrestleManias, or is it going to take them being a superstar like The Rock or John Cena or somebody who's in the mainstream? I think it could be kind of fun if I actually think about this, like if the market were to react in a way where like, oh, this guy's on TV now, his prices are going to go up.
Right.
I think that could be fun, and I think that could actually be good for wrestling cards because it could get some of the people who like prospecting in sports more into being into wrestling cards in a way, Does that make sense?
I thought too, like it's more of that sports card play where they're able to see them in real time, just like they are the athletes, as opposed to, a Hogan or a Rock or somebody like that.
Yeah. So recently I kind of like dipped into it, like trying to start a couple prospecting aspects of it. And I was buying a bunch of Walter rookie cards and Pete Dunne, guys who are like big in NXT, they're good. They have a following in the UK. And then a couple months later, they're on TV. And so to me, that's exciting, being like, oh, okay, I was right about this guy. I saw he's going to be on TV. He's going to be a star. I think that could be a lot of fun for people if that's something an avenue that people start getting into in wrestling cards.
Yeah, I agree. So let's start with Prism, the kind of meteoric rise with Prism, and not only the popularity, but the pricing, the opinions, everything surrounding the release. It's out now. It's been out for a couple weeks. What's your initial takeaway and reaction? Take it whatever direction you want to.
What a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I mean, I had never seen so much hype around one product in a vacuum on Twitter. Like the release of a product was crazy. Yeah. It was trending on Twitter in sports. Like I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
I think the product is incredible. I've been since October, I've been like pounding the table, like Prism's coming. Prism's going to be great. Like this is going to be great. And I've seen all the different opinions. Like this is terrible for the hobby. And I've seen people mad, like still wishing for it to fail, which I think is stupid. But I also see people who I follow on Twitter that have never once talked about a wrestling card coming in and be like, oh, look at this. I bought this Prism card of this guy I loved when I was a kid, you know? And so I'm seeing new people get into it, which is awesome. And I'm seeing wrestling card collectors of old just want it to fail, which I don't really understand. It's like, do you want the wrestling cards only to yourself, or do you want more people to be in the wrestling cards? Like, why are you collecting wrestling cards if you're just trying to hoard it for yourself? I don't know, but overall Prism, I think it blew away my expectations, and my expectations were huge.
Right.
Like, and the checklist is amazing. The cards look amazing. The photos are amazing. I'd never seen a wrestling set so great.
Probably the best checklist of all time.
Yeah, yeah. And another reason why I never got big into wrestling cards before, because it seemed to me like Topps didn't care about the product. They put out a lot of junk sets. There was no consistency. Like, it went, 5-6 years without a Topps Chrome release.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they do gimmicky stuff like Kiss cards, and like, to me, that stuff just makes it seem like it's on a lower level, you know?
Which is interesting because like the traditional wrestling card community looks at that as like top tier type of cards. Whereas everybody coming into Prism knows the color and the low numbers, and people are out there like, why does a Prism Gold sell for this much when a Prism Silver sells for, you know, a tenth of the price or something like that? Like, it's just like sometimes the sports card guys coming in have a huge advantage with Prism, and the wrestling cards at a disadvantage. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's like if people want to come into wrestling from sports cards, they're going to have an advantage over the traditional collector because they know what is it desirable out of the product.
Yep.
And it will be interesting to see like if that takes over, or if it kind of goes back to what people are used to being the top of the product, you know.
So what do you think about kind of how the pricing has ended up? We're still, to this, like at the time of recording, we're still seeing record sales, but we're also seeing the base stuff, which most people predicted going way down. I even saw some people out there selling lots of base singles where if you bought the lot for like $100 or $200, it broke down to like $1 a card, something like that. So base stuff's really going down, which I think people are afraid of. And then there's people out there saying that there's no reason a Prism Gold should sell for, you know, 5 figures, which they just don't know. But then there's also the shill bidding aspect, and like, what is actually being sold, what's not. What do you think about all this hysteria surrounding the pricing, both high and low?
Well, the thing about base stuff coming down is that's so typical of any sports release.
Yeah.
So when you got say the new Prism football comes out, first couple of weeks it comes out, people will pay whatever just to be the first ones to get it. Mm-hmm. And it always comes out hot. People are excited. FOMO is real. Like, they want that first base card. Like, here it is, excited. I got to have it now. A couple of weeks go by. The people who really want it out the gate start to settle down a little bit. Prices come back down to earth, and that's normal. And because of a base card sells for $30 on the first day and it sells for $3 next week, that's not something to panic about at all. I don't, because that's how any sport new release goes.
Yeah, and I think that thing right there you just said is exactly what the traditionalists were kind of complaining about. Like, I can't afford this, and like people who know Prism are like, just wait, be patient. Some of the base stuff will go down. You'll be able to get the rookie base. It's that high end color that I think people just don't know as much about. But
right, yeah, that's the thing. It's like people were so scared, like, I'm not going to be able to afford any of this. But yeah, you can't afford a $1,200 box, but wait a couple of weeks and all those cards of those guys you want, you're going to be able to buy singles for not too much higher than what you're used to paying. Unless you're going for the high end stuff, everything is typically, what I've seen is pretty normal. But if you're looking for those low number parallels, the big cards of your favorite wrestler, you're probably not going to be able to buy them unless you're willing to put up the money for it.
Right.
But as far as being like, if you collect Reggie, for God knows whatever reason you collect Reggie, you're going to be able to buy, you're still going to be able to get most of what you want for not much more than you're used to paying.
You may be able to get like the gold prisms for relatively affordable for some talent.
Even like that. Yeah. Unless you're going after the top guys. you're not going to see too much madness as long as you didn't splurge on the first week. So.
Another thing I think is interesting that, again, the sports card guys get it, wrestling card guys are, I don't want to say don't get it. I'll say learning, because it is a learning process for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Not everybody has been curmudgeon kind of, like there are some people we've seen that are like, they don't understand it as well, and they're just approaching it and learning on the fly and having fun doing it. But one thing that I think is interesting is the complaint about autographs. And most of the people know that Prism is known for sticker autographs, whereas the wrestling card community traditionally is like, we want on-card autographs, and autographs is what drives the prices of boxes and drives the prices of singles. Not the case with Prism. What's your take on all that?
So with Prism, the autographs in all sports, they're not the driver of the value. The driver is your case hits, your gold prisms, your black prisms. And in a way, that could be good if you are chasing autographs, because they're not going to be the ones that are completely out of touch.
Yeah.
Or out of reach. And if you want, and there's going to be more Panini products that have autographs that are on card, but with Prism, that's the thing is, I feel like people see the Prism release and they think that's it. That's what every single Panini product is going to be. Every single Panini product is going to be this expensive for a box, this expensive for a parallel, this expensive for an autograph, but it's not all going to be like that. They have lower end product for people to buy.
Right.
Yeah. And the autograph thing, that's just another, I think it's just another learning thing.
Yeah. I think one, like, there's some autographs I've seen where, like sticker autograph, whatever, right? But the design of this specific autograph cards, like some of the images used and some of the designs, I think are actually better than some of the base cards featured of that same talent. So maybe that's a way to get stuff a little bit cheaper, because, autographs are looked down upon because they're stickers.
Yeah, because those high-end collectors coming from sports, they're going to be going for those base, low numbered base. If you want the autograph, that's a good point. They're not as valued as highly in the Prism by your typical sports collector. So if you're really hunting that autograph, some of the autographs, like you said, the photos look better than the base cards.
Yeah.
So that's an opportunity right there.
Yeah. Who cares about the autograph? You like the card. It's just, there you go.
Yeah. Right. Some of the autograph photos are great. Like the Sasha Banks autograph
photo.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite cards in the whole set.
So what do you think about all the shill bidding? Because that's something that wrestling is just, they may know Prism, they may know color and parallels, but shill bidding is like a whole new thing for the most part. It's a commonplace in sports. We see it all the time. Why do you think there is this huge boom all of a sudden with the Prism stuff? Do you think it's the non-wrestling people coming in, or what do you think?
I think so. You see it, like you said, with the new releases with Prism, especially. People want to, whether it's nefarious stuff, people want to pump up sales so they can sell their break prices.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is a lot of people coming in buying the Prism cases and boxes are big breakers who've never bought wrestling ever before or broke wrestling ever before. That could be it. I hate to make accusations, but some of the auctions I've seen, you see people coming in with 2 feet back, sniping auction at the very last second.
Yeah.
And it never goes paid. So I don't know if there's put on my tinfoil hat here. I don't know if there's a group out there who's trying to sabotage, trying to make it so people aren't getting paid. So people just dump their product. But the shilling, that it happens. It's an unfortunate part of the hobby. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen it too. Like, you talked about the trending when Prism came out, and I thought it was interesting that you had negativity from both sides. You had the traditionalists, which we talked about, but I also saw a lot of people out there in traditional sports cards saying, why is wrestling selling for this amount of money? It's not a sport. Why are my NFL rookies from last year why are they selling for less than a John Cena or whatever? Like that, I thought that was an interesting take.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is I think there's people who if they miss out on money, they miss out on an opportunity for money, they're going to be salty about it. They're going to be like, well, this can't be worth this much if I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
It's like John Cena, who cares? Who watches wrestling? Who cares about wrestling? Well, they don't fail to realize that wrestling is bigger than any American sport. It's more on par with soccer and F1 than it is on baseball. It's like, I think there is a lot of saltiness involved with the quote unquote influencers, or they missed out on the opportunity when everyone was telling them for months, like, hey, this is a great buy, get in now before it takes off, and they missed the boat, and now they have to talk down about it because they're not a part of it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, well, we both mentioned John Cena. Like, if he walks down the street, I guarantee you more people are going to recognize him than any other athlete outside of like LeBron James walking down the street. Like, it just is what it is. There's facts are facts. I mean, it's mainstream popularity of pop culture.
Yeah, and it's global too.
Yeah,
like the Major League Baseball players, how many of them can go walk the streets of Japan and anybody in Japan is going to know who they are?
Right.
When you look at you look at social media followers for the most insignificant wrestlers on TV, and they have double the followers of the top young stars in baseball.
Right.
I think people underestimate the fandom that there actually is involving professional wrestling.
Yeah, huge diehard, and that's something that we've been trying to get more wrestling like fans involved, because again, they buy the shirts, they buy the figures, they buy all that stuff, but like the wrestling cards have been kind of lagging behind. I think that's changing, especially with Prism commercials now that we've seen on Monday Night Raw. And I'll even go back, AEW putting Upper Deck commercials on their TV. Like the floodgates have been open for wrestling cards as a legitimate collectible going forward. So another thing I want to mention real quick is the wrestling card community. What has your experience been coming into the community as a whole compared to what traditional sports cards has been like?
Well, I want to touch on what you said before real quick about wrestling fans and wrestling cards. There's so many of these fans, they spend so much money on action figures, replica belts, t-shirts, like huge amounts of money on memorabilia. It's like, if you could get even a small percentage of those people into cards, that's a huge market.
Yep.
I saw some on the other day on Liv Morgan's WrestleMania whip that she carried out to the ring with her was auctioned on somebody paid $10,000 for it. You
could have got a Prism Gold for something like that.
Yeah, so if any of these people want to get into cards, then I think this is just the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah, and then something we didn't even touch on with that is fanatics. Like, what are they going to do at live events for people? Like, it could be amazing.
Right, yeah. Now that they have the license for merchandise, it's like the market potential there is ginormous. I think people don't realize that. So anyways, the wrestling collector community, I think, is mostly great from what I've experienced compared to the sports card. There's more like clapping for each other, patting each other on the back, like, you got that card, that's awesome, that's great. Whereas in the sports world, like, you'll see somebody, oh, I just bought this. I love this card. And the first comment is like, oh, it's off center. That's going to be poorly graded.
Yeah.
I don't see that really too much in my experience in the wrestling community. On Twitter, at least, I haven't ventured down the rabbit hole of Facebook wrestling card Twitter, but I hear about that a lot. But guys are generous. Guys are eager to share information with you. I can DM somebody and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, oh yeah, they'll give me advice. Or the other day I posted something like, I was talking about indie cards with Caleb, and he was like, oh, I have a couple of these, I can send them to you. And I was like, oh, how much? He's like, no, they're free. And I was like, okay, you don't see that kind of stuff too often in the sports. I mean, it's there, but it's not so prominent, I don't think.
Yeah, it's maybe like trying to unload base cards or something, as opposed to in wrestling, like people will send you autographs or something.
Yeah. I mean, there are people in the sports card world, I don't want to give it a bad name entirely, that are really generous as well. But overall, I'd say the wrestling card community is really positive and really fun.
So transitioning, kind of closing out the interview here, let's talk about your collection. Like, how do you collect? What do you have a main PC? Do you have a strategy? Has the community helped you with that? Just kind of what are you collecting?
So I'm really scatterbrained when it comes to collecting. Like,
All right, this will be good.
One week I'm all about this, and then I see something else that catches my eye, like the little kid who sees a balloon, and then I start chasing that down the street. I 1 week I'll be into rookie cards. Recently, I've been buying or a couple of weeks ago, I started buying up all the Topps Chrome. Like, I was like gold parallels of all the top guys. I was like, these are so cheap. I want all of these. Like, these are all my favorite wrestlers. I can get their best cards. I got it. This is like all.
Oh wow!
All Topps Chrome gold, color orange. This cost me less than $300.
Yeah.
And then I don't really I'm kind of a directionless collector, which in a way is not always the best for my wallet, but
yeah.
Whatever catches whatever catches my attention at the moment, that's what I go after. And then I recently started collecting, like I said earlier, Pete Dunne and Walter. So I've been trying to.
Those are kind of your player PCs.
Yeah, I've kind of started. I was like, I want to have a main PC, and which is something I never really did before, but it's been fun to do.
That's what I've been preaching to people since I started the cross thing. Is like, if you can latch onto a talent, no matter if it's Reggie or Roman Reigns, it doesn't matter. Like, you latch on to somebody and just start going down the rabbit hole of them. And like, people don't realize how much fun it is. And thanks for saying that, because apparently you're having fun.
It is fun because once I started doing that, I've had more direction in how I collect. Like, when Prism came out, I've been hunting the parallels for both of them, each parallel, kind of like starting on a rainbow.
Yep.
And there's a lot more fun than just going through and be like, oh, this is a good deal, I want to buy this. This looks cheap, let me buy this.
Right.
Having a direction and having a collection to focus on is a lot of fun.
Right. So two things I want to mention that within your collection. How are you funding your collection? Because it's something I've complained about a lot in wrestling traditionally, is that people just hoard stuff. Whereas in sports cards, it's a common thing to buy stuff to sell to then fund what you're keeping. How are you going about that process?
I've noticed that too. The idea of selling to buy seems kind of foreign to a lot of wrestling collectors. And that's most of my purchases in cards are with money that I've got from selling another card.
Selling all that Baker Mayfield stuff.
I just sold a lot of it, actually. I did, yeah. And it seems like a little bit in the wrestling community, it's like, once you have something, you're not allowed to sell it. Or like, that's bad business, is to flip something to buy something else. Like, I see that, and I think it's really important for collectors to fund cards that they want with cards they have that maybe they don't love so much anymore, or more direction. Like, because you can't, if I've used all my paycheck to buy cards I wanted, that's a dangerous game.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I have this $2,000 card just sitting in this box and I don't care so much about this player anymore, then I'll sell this and buy something else that I really want.
Right.
And that would be my piece of advice to people in a wrestling card community that don't do that, or they think it's foreign, or they think it's bad to see somebody sell something for money, that sell something for more than they paid for it. That's not a price gouge, or it's not bad practice. That's how you should be operating in buying cards, from my opinion.
Yeah, and another thing I want to touch on that I have personally started using, I've always had that same mentality. Buying, selling, just constant activity. At trading too, I like to do a lot of trades. But something that I've recently just kind of light bulb went off was that, if I buy something, and it could have been something that was intended for my PC, but I like to look out there and say, if bigger cards come up, or I just want to get rid of something, I'll say, is that card available? If there's more than 5 copies at any given time, it's not really that hard of a card to find or rare. So hypothetically, you could rebuy it if you wanted. So a lot of times I'll say, okay, well, if this is something like that, let's just move it. But if it's like a Hogan PMG, which I'll never find another one again at an affordable price, that stays in the PC. And so that process, and then as I'm getting rid of the card, my thought process is, I can say I had this in my collection. It was fun while it lasted. I was an
Yep.
owner at one time. Now let's let someone else enjoy it while I, go into something else with it. So
Yeah, that's a great point. That I think that's important too. Like I've had stuff that I'll never see again that I've sold. But it's like I know somebody else, right? Like I got my enjoyment out of it. Now it's somebody else's turn.
right,
I'm not gonna hold this card for 20 years just to say I'm the only one who has it.
right,
And I
yeah,
think, and I noticed that too coming in is like a lot of which is another reason why I was so excited for the Panini and the Prism and stuff, because a lot of the best stuff that exists right now in wrestling cards you will never be able to buy.
yeah,
But with the new product coming out, it's like all this best stuff right now it's attainable because nobody else has it yet. But if I like when I started looking for like I wanted to start collecting John Cena, when I first got into wrestling cards, and I searched and I was like, none of his best cards are anywhere. I can't buy any of it. So it's like I can't collect him because I'm not going to be able to get anything.
mm-hmm.
So I think I think that kind of is a turnoff for some would be a turnoff for somebody coming into wrestling cards who want like, hey, I want to buy the best Cena cards. I can't buy any of them. Okay, well, I'm not going to collect wrestling cards.
Right.
So I think if people learn, like, I don't have to hold these cards forever.
Well,
Something that maybe
you don't have to have that. This is I'm sorry to cut you off, but you mentioned it. Like, if you can't have the best cards, you don't want to participate. I hate that philosophy. Like, I know everybody wants to have the best, whatnot, but like, if base cards make you happy, like jump into it. There's always a starting point, and you can build your way up from there. So that I just wanted to get that out there since you said that.
No, yeah. I'm not saying like everybody has to have the best cards.
No, but that's what I see a lot of is people think that if they don't have thousands, they can't get in, and I'm just like, no, you can still have fun.
Yeah. There's different levels and entry points for anybody you want.
Right.
Like you don't have to have the best cards of every single person.
Right. So another thing, as we're closing out here, that I wanted to ask, I'm actually starting to get this quite a bit, and I have differing opinions. Some people I talk to that I respect their opinions agree with me, some disagree. So I'd like to get your take. What do you think the more recent Chrome stuff, all the way back to the All-Star stuff in the 70s and whatever, like, how do you think the past wrestling cards are going to start performing of popularity, pricing, people talking about them, now that Prism has kind of pushed wrestling to the mainstream now?
I think it could only be logically it could only be good for the value of that stuff, because especially if there's new collectors entering, which kind of goes to what we were just talking about. If there's new collectors entering because of Prism, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, maybe I wanted a John Cena rookie card, and then they go look, and then there's more people looking for the old stuff that weren't looking for the old stuff before, which only makes it more valuable. More eyeballs on it, more people want it. I think it's good for all of it. Just because the new stuff is hot doesn't mean all of a sudden nobody cares about the old stuff anymore. If it's going to be bringing new people into wrestling, there's going to be more people who want the older stuff that came before. It's once they learn that this is not the only wrestling set that exists, that they made Topps Chrome, let me go see how much this Edge Topps Chrome card is. So I don't see it as a bad thing, and I don't think that you have to. And I see a lot of this too, is like there's the vintage collectors and there's the new collectors, and there's there's kind of a clash there. Like they can both coexist, because in sports there's vintage and there's modern, and just because you like one doesn't mean you don't necessarily like the other, but it also doesn't mean the other is worthless or you don't hate the other.
Right.
Yeah, so I think overall it's a benefit. Yeah,
I think so too. I think if I'm going to play, like, if I want to be negative for a moment, my only thing is, like, with the popularity and boom, I'm going to take sports cards, for example. It's all about the latest and greatest, and they kind of don't respect the history. And that's something I've been kind of being a proponent of, is wrestling history. Like, go back and look at Austin Idol cards or Superstar Billy Graham, or these guys that are not the Hogans and the Rock. I know they're never going to be top tier talents, but just going back and looking at those, because we've got that in vintage baseball, where people go back and look at these players from the 20s and 30s that they never got to watch, but there's an aura or a mystique about the character or the card or the set. And I'm hoping that kind of transitions into vintage, but I'm kind of with you. Like, I think the Chrome and Finest and the last like probably 10 years worth of cards are going to start getting picked up pretty quick.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I think there's going to be people too, like, oh, I want a rock gold, but I can't afford a rock gold. Let me see if there's a rock top Chrome I can go get.
Right.
But yeah, like with the history aspect of it, there's people who it's kind of a generational thing. You know, there's young people buying sports cards who they never heard of. They don't know anything about Ty Cobb other than their dad told them about him. You know, and there's going to be people who they just don't care about that old stuff, and it doesn't mean they don't respect it or they don't. Or that it's worthless, or they think it's worthless. They just have no interest in it because they have no connection to it in a way.
Well, and vice versa too. Like something.
And
yeah.
Yep. The same goes for vice versa. Yep. And that goes for wrestling too.
Yeah, I guess I'm just fortunate that I like watching and collecting the vintage stuff. I like watching, and I wouldn't say I buy as much modern stuff, but I definitely, pick and choose my spots, and it's fun just being, in the wrestling card hobby as a whole. So thanks for joining us today. Let everybody know where they can find you and any kind of parting words or anything else you want to say before we get out of here.
Thanks for having me. I love the show. I watch it all the time.
Thank you.
I am actually like watching your show and the show you do with Tony. Those help me get into wrestling cards too. You can find me on Twitter at FlexBurkhead. I don't create content other than yell on Twitter, and
it's good content.
I'm a lot less obnoxious in person than I am on Twitter. Other than that, man, it's thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yep, thanks for coming on. We'll put the link to your Twitter bio in the show notes. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks again, FlexBurkhead, for coming on the channel. And guys like him are the exact type of people that I was talking to all of you viewers about at the beginning of this year when I said, hey, I want to get more people from outside of the wrestling card bubble into the wrestling card space and talk about these things. To bring you, the Wrestling with Cards community, some outside perspective to how you could apply to wrestling cards. While I have been doing this for a while now, I knew Prism was coming. I knew AEW was going to bring new eyeballs. So we needed to get that information to kind of infiltrate the little bubble of the traditional wrestling card hobby. And it's worked. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. We've gotten a lot of new people in the hobby. Onwards and upwards for wrestling cards. And also in the process, maybe we get the mainstream people who are wrestling fans but don't collect cards at all. Our sports card fans don't collect wrestling. We've already seen, again, some of that coming in with Prism. But all of those people coming into wrestling cards, it's just awesome, and everybody wins. Again, wrestling cards to the moon. Let's go. Thank you guys for watching. Again, links to Flex Burkhead's Twitter account, as well as all the ways that you can help show your support for my content. All of that is going to be in the show notes. So before you click off this video, take some time to check out the links in those. And when you're done with that, make sure to click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. I'll see you in those videos.